to Desire Dilemma, a podcast that amplifies immigrant voices in America. I'm Funmi Apantaku-Onayemi, your host. Today, we're having a conversation about the desires and dilemmas of Jeannie Gibson, who came from the islands of the Bahamas. Our podcast counselor, Dr. Risa Jones, will guide us through Ms. Gibson's triumphs and challenges in the land of the free. For the growing population of older immigrants in the U.S., the relationships they have with their families in their native land and the relationships they have with their adult children who were born in the United States are important factors affecting their psychological well-being. Jeannie Gibson came to the U.S. from the islands of the Bahamas. America officially reports that 56,000 Bahamians reside in the U.S. as of 2019. Bahamians were among the first West Indians to immigrate to the U.S. in the late 19th century. The islands of the Bahamas is a group of 700 islands located in the Atlantic Ocean. However, only about 30 of these islands are livable. Bahamas is a tourist paradise with palm trees lining the tropical islands, surrounded by turquoise waters and pink sand beaches. In the U.S., everyone wants to go to the Bahamas. The question is, Jeannie Gibson, why are you in the U.S.? You left for the U.S. and you've been here for years. Has America been that good to you?
Yes and no. If I'm to be totally transparent, I would say that there has been benefits and advantages, and I believe disadvantages as well. When I came here to this country, I came to go to school, and I loved the vastness of this country. I loved that, everything here just seemed bigger, than in my country. It just seemed like a place where you could have a lot of adventure and you could get lost, I guess. Sometimes I think, you feel in small countries, small places, you feel like a little fish in a pond, whereas in America, you're a small fish in a big pond. In the Bahamas, you're a big fish in a small pond. I don't know if I said that right, but something like that. And so it's, I guess it was really the allure of the variety of things to do and the variety of places to go. It really just reminded me of what they talk about in the Bible, the land of plenty. That's just the way it seemed to me. Even though in my country, we never lacked, and my country still has somewhat of a very high standard of living, I like to think here that there's a bigger variety of everything, and I love variety and choices. And I think for the most part, that's what it was.
So did America meet your expectations then when you got here?
It certainly did meet my expectations as far as, the variety of choices for everything. But I find that I missed the closeness of my family. I think that's what I missed most of all. It's something that I have had to deal with my entire time here. It's always been a struggle, just trying to find those intimate groups. That's been my issue. Thank God I have a very, very, very good friend. Even though my friend lives thousands of miles from me, but I can thank God that, I have that good friend, and I have made other good friends as well. But, the intimacy, I'll give an example. When I was raising my first son before I moved here to the U.S., he would go to kindergarten school, and I would go and pick him up. And when I pick him up from school, we would go immediately to my mom's house. And I would leave him there at my mom's house, where he would be joined as soon as the public schools came out by my nieces and nephews, whose parents would also drop them there at mom's house. And so all of the kids would be there. They would play together, have fun together. And then when I'm finished with work about 6 o'clock, 5:36, whatever, I would go to pick him up. And when I get there, I just make myself comfortable in the living room. I chat with my siblings, chat with mom, and definitely I have a meal. And so we're all eating. Mommy has cooked, and everybody eats, and we chat. Whatever, the children have played and had fun, and when we go home, we just, only thing we need to do is get ready for bed, and because you've already had your meal and everything like that. And it was really just so convenient. You had your food, your fun, your fellowship, everything, boom, wrapped up, and we're good to go. But here, when I brought my son here and we started living here, it was a totally different story. I found that it was a struggle to, number one, to get to him to a daycare, get me to work. And then there was a whole struggle picking him up in the afternoon and getting on the buses and trains and everything. In Chicago, it was really just, a circus, really just doing all of that. And so it was much different, let me say that. And then we get home, and then I have to look around to find something, cook something, for us to eat. And then, get them ready for bed and, settle down and all. Totally different experience.
Would you say you've been able to bridge that gap in terms of family relationships here in America and also in the Bahamas, whereby you have your families interacting from both ends?
Yes, I can say that, thank God I have been able to, make that work. What I did when my kids were young was I sent them home to the Bahamas every summer. And so they got to, get to know and spend a lot of time with their cousins. They all, just grew up together. Each summer they would go to the Bahamas, and they got to know the Bahamas pretty good because they would be there for about 2 months each year. And then, of course, we would go home. So, yes, they did get and of course, I got to talk to my siblings, via the phone, and through visits, but it's never all quite the same. But, we managed to stay, connected. Mm-hmm.
Now you are now a grandmother of 4 in the United States and also a grandmother of 2 in the Caribbean. Are you having them come together the way you envision?
Okay, so I do have 4 here in the U.S. I have 2 in the Bahamas and 2 in Belize. And the ones in the U.S., I get to see them much more, of course, than I get to see any of the others, since this is where I live. But my grandkids in the Bahamas and in Belize, I try to visit with them. And so I visited with the ones in Belize earlier this year. I try to do it at least once a year. And my grandkids in the Bahamas, I visit them at least once a year. I got to visit them a few months ago. Also, one of my grandkids in the Bahamas would sometimes come and spend the summer with me and be with me for a few months. And so, that's how we're making that work, trying to, to shorten the distance that is between us.
So we've been friends for as long as you've been in this country. So I do know that you struggle with the whole plan of having your grandchildren especially know about the Bahamas. How have you been able to do that?
You're talking about the ones here in the U.S. Yes.
Yes.
I do struggle with that. One of the things that I struggle with is the fact that I don't get to see them as much as I would like to, as often as I would like to. And I think it's something that lots of grandmothers, in fact, I've heard a lot of grandmothers say that. But in this, in this society as we live in it now, everybody, the children, the parents, everybody has such tight schedules, so to speak. It's difficult to do that. But my son, he tries to make every effort to make sure that I get to speak with those children, that I get to spend time with them, that we get to do things together. And I want my grandchildren to know me, to know my personality. I want them to know about my culture. I want them to know about, what my passions are. And so my grandkids, they know me. They know that their grandmother is silly. We laugh a lot together. So they know my character. They know a little about the culture, not enough. But I guess as they get older, we're going to talk to them about. I'm trusting that I'll get to talk to them even more about that. They know about the Bahamas, and then they know about my passions, religion, and then writing. They know the spiritual part of me. And so what would happen is, what we've been doing is I visit with them or they visit with me, and we have a meal together. And after the meal, we laugh, we talk about something, regarding my writing. I wrote a book, just a couple years ago called Grammy Used to Say. And it's about the sayings, of my grandmother, who was, of course, a Bahamian, and it's in Bahamian dialect. And so, the girls were given a book to read, and it was really just fun discussing that with them, asking them, what do you think Grammy meant when she said this? A few weeks ago when I went to their home for dinner, and we were just having a good time talking and everything. And their mom, she said to them, "Oh, and tell Grammy, about how you heard her talking about her book." Then they went on to tell me about, how they had heard an interview that I had done, somewhat of a news cast on a station in the Bahamas, and it was done via Zoom. And they could tell me the different things that I said, and they were just so excited about, all the things that they learned. And it was really just so fun. And I gotta tell you, I was pleasantly surprised that, she said, "Oh yeah," she said, "we turned it on, and we turned the interview on, and I let them listen, and they just enjoyed listening to it, listened to almost the entire thing." It was, and so this way they're also learning about me, learning about my culture, learning about, the country, that is their, that they're descended from.
Dr. Jones, you've heard everything that Jeannie Gibson had to say about the Bahamas, the grandkids, the challenge she's had in terms of relationships with family at home and those here. How do you guide us through what she's talked about in terms of her culture, her family, and the relationships that she misses? So what would you tell us about how can she cope?
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your story, part of your story. I know there's so much to share. And I'm just intrigued by your book, Gammy Used to Say, and the fun and joy that you've built in sharing with your family. For you personally, what has, you mentioned that both religion and writing are passions for you. And I'm turning to you actually as the expert in terms of thinking about how creative expressions can support even in a seasoned immigrant experience to help process experiences, or what are the things would you suggest for people as they reflect on their own immigrant experience and try to make new and renewed connections?
One of the things that I would say is that, people in my position, especially grandparents, have a responsibility to ensure that their grandchildren, have that knowledge about the country from which they're descended, because it enriches the child's life. It enriches each child's life, and so I believe that they should always find opportunities, to share with the children. And if they don't write, at least I know I write, but if they don't write, then they should find time to read books, about the country with their children. And, also, I guess, share certain things about the country, like the flag, make fun, have fun opportunities to share about the flag. I remember with my oldest son, he lived in the U.S. his entire childhood, even though he, was born in the Bahamas, and so I taught him songs. This is something that people can also share with their American grandbabies, the babies growing up here in America. Share with them songs of the country, share with them the poetry, the stories, the colorful people, of the country, who were some of the the more famous people from that country. And, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that the Bahamas was Christopher Columbus's first landfall. And I know a lot of people claim that as well. But we stand by that his first landfall was in San Salvador, Bahamas. And so this is important to us. And so these are the kinds of things that you want to share with your grandbabies. Make fun games out of it and do that as much as possible.
And it sounds like you've built in just wonderful ways to transfer culture and symbolism. That's important because oftentimes, I hear people lament over not seeing the culture transferred, but that it can happen through small things that end up being very big, like flags that often retain the symbols of the culture, or things that were fought for, or things that are important. What are some of the main things that you, from your culture, through the flag and the songs and the poetry and the colorful people, would you most want to ensure that your grandchildren and children retain and pass on?
It's interesting that you should ask that, because there's something that I didn't mention, that I find a little bit concerning right now. I'm sure it's going to get better, because when my little ones, when they were young, the only thing they ate was hot dog and mac and cheese and fish sticks, and so for my grandbabies now, they're vegetarians, of course. And they don't eat a lot too. But I really want them to begin to enjoy the cuisine of the Bahamas. Because I think the cuisine is such an important part of the culture. Yes. And so that's something that we've not been doing much, because every time I cook for them for the parents and stuff like that, their parents love the Bahamas' peas and rice and macaroni and potato salad and different things like that. but the babies are not there yet. My little ones are not there yet, but that's something that I want them to get.
That's beautiful. And also turning to your lived experience and expertise, you mentioned that so much in terms of having your family with you, you were able to have the food, fun, and fellowship in one location. So it eased the burden for you as well as a parent in trying to manage time and pickups and everything that was different than in the U.S. What do you suggest, looking back in hindsight, of ways that people can build friendships or intimate groups, even though they might have the time challenges and the location distance challenges that you mentioned in your earlier description?
That's a more difficult question. Let's see. I'm trying to think of ways that, I somewhat was able to do that. And I realized that even though I was a single parent and raised my sons alone, one of the things that helped me to bridge the gap was friends. And so everywhere I went, I had to establish, a group of friends. And I was lucky to do that. I did that mostly through the relationships with my children and their friends. Their friends' parents would become my friends. And so that way we would, be able to help each other and support each other. We would get some of that family bonding that, we would have missed, if we were in the Bahamas. So I think through friendships, you have to find ways to create friendships, and, the children's friends, their parents, are some of your best allies. You would find some of them are your best allies because you want to get to know the parents of the children who are spending time with your children. That's so important. Even on a different level, that's so important. Because if your children are going to be doing sleepovers and spending time with someone, you want to know that person as much as possible. And so, when you bond with these people, then, you become friends. And that's one of the things that I have done a lot of over the years. I've lived in a number of major cities in the U.S. and everywhere we've lived, when the children were in kindergarten, some lived in one state. When they went to elementary school, we lived in a different state. And then we lived in a different state for middle school. I think it was the end of middle school and high school when we really, got grounded. But so for almost every stage, where we lived, we made friendships with my children's friends' parents.
Thank you for all the expert advice and how I know a lot of parents feel frustrated, immigrant parents feel frustrated and thinking that their children don't listen to them or they don't have the influence over their children or grandchildren as they would like to. But you shared how much, through the sharing of culture and through the relationship building that the families do have a very powerful and beautiful and impactful influence. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeannie Gibson. And of course, Dr. Jones, I really appreciate the way you let us see from Jeannie Gibson's story that she actually has overcome the challenges that she began with. The whole idea of relationships and friendships and kids and culture, that she was able to actually pull it together. So we thank you, Jeannie Gibson, for sharing. And even though you are now retired, you've decided to stay in the United States. And we thank you for that because, of course, I like to see you for Thanksgiving. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to that.
Thank both of you for your time. And Dr. Jones, I really appreciate your tips. And Jeannie Gibson, thank you for your story. Thank you for listening to our podcast on immigrants' desires to come to America and their dilemmas in staying in America. We hope that this information has been helpful and informative. America offers opportunities and challenges. With the right guidance and support, one can celebrate the good times and cope with the challenging times. Join us again on the next episode of Desire Dilemma podcast. Thank you and have a wonderful rest of your day.